Hello and welcome to another 15-minute memory, or as I have started calling it, that is what I've started calling it, otherwise known as the 15-minute line drawing from the Memories and Reveries practice. This one is of a recent at the time memory where I'd just been into the loft, and it's one of my I suppose it's kind of one of my more favoured of the series, because it has a bit of an interesting layers of depth in a couple of different places. The first one is what I'm drawing now, which is the hatch that you come through. For me, that's really quite a nice, unique aspect to this place to draw. Really appealed to me as a memory. It felt right immediately because you're coming up through a gap in the ground, and it's obviously not in the ground, it's in the ceiling, but when you're in this space you've got like a little hatch into the ground, and for me I don't have one of those in any other room. And the other thing is that once you pop your head up through this hatch, you've got this different patchwork of wooden beams and different kind of joists and different structural things that are not covered up by walls and wallpaper. It's quite nice to see from a drawing perspective, because it's a lot of perspective drawing, and it's all everything's kind of, the gaps in between the beams are like little windows into different places. And because the loft is where you store things, there's a lot of boxes of things, and then in between that there'll be bits and pieces from ironing boards to old bits of technology and bits of Christmas decorations, and then there's records, and there's like bits and bobs that you have in the loft that just get shifted around until you have better space for them, or they're just sentimental. And it makes it quite a nice different mixture of objects that you're glimpsing through these different shapes that are like triangular windows. Because one of the things that I draw in a moment for this is this is all the insulation, all this furry stuff that I'm doing, but this part here is what was the first thing in my memory when I thought of this as a potential. And it took a second here for me to orientate where the beams go, in which direction. And I had to remember, when you pop your head up, the roof is going into the drawing, it's going upwards that way. So that's how I had to draw this joist going up here. And I really like this for, just remembering where this was means that I've placed this shape here, where ordinarily I don't think that I would make such a big, bold shape in a drawing from imagination, whereas the memory was dictating where certain things affected the composition. That really made this one quite interesting for me, as I keep saying. So there's the triangular window, and you've got the hatch through the ground. Aside from that, there's, depth that you can now describe into that space, because when you come up into the loft, you obviously have a certain amount of space to walk through. But some of the other details I didn't want to miss is that the way our loft is arranged is that when you pop your head up, you have the hatch and then this insulation, and then you have this other wooden kind of frame to your left hand side, and then you have boards lay down on top of the beams, and bits of insulation kind of sticking in between, and then boxes stacked behind that. And there's not, I suppose, it depends on what your house is, what your loft is like, and ours is not done up for a room where you go up very often. But this is, where I'm trying to figure out placement for the boxes and the different things. One of the things I have here is also it's a lot of objects that I had in a flat in Manchester that I don't have space for currently, and are just in storage at the moment. Some of it I don't even like that much, and I'm keeping for different reasons than wanting to use the actual thing again. I know that sounds weird. What I'm talking about specifically is what I'm actually drawing now, and this is one of those office desk chairs which have, you know, the wheels and the spongy seat and the kind of plastic armrests. It's not a very comfy chair, and I traded it in for, well, I say traded it in, I just put it in the loft and brought down from the loft this chair which I'm in at the moment, which you can hear is a creaky chair, and I like it because it's a lot more comfortable. It's wooden and more solid, but it's far more comfortable than this old desk chair that I'm drawing at the moment. And I think I'm fairly happy with how this worked out as well. This was, you know, I've got a relatively good idea in my head of what it looks like and where things are on the chair. Obviously size-wise I'm not too sure. I think the thing which I forget in this picture, which would have been quite nice, is that I've got quite a lot of framed artwork that just doesn't fit in the house at the moment, up in the loft, which is always a nice surprise when I go up there. And because it's a surprise, I don't remember it from this memory. You just surprises me when I go up there. Not in a shocking way, but in a pleasant surprise of going, that's, you know, it's makes it a bit more homely. And that's kind of up against, you know, certain things in storage behind the chair. It's just lent up against it, or on top of certain storage container. I say storage containers, just I'm trying to avoid saying boxes a million times in this video, but that's what most of it is, because everything's just been packed up and all chucked into one container. These are all just bits and bobs that I find on top as well, because there are loose objects that I think when I've been looking for things, I've taken out certain objects and items and just placed them on the side, and they've just ended up that way. So it's a real mess, basically. What I'm describing is jobs that I'm yet to do, is to go and tidy up a lot of this. But it makes for a more interesting thing to draw, because there's lots of different you know, marks that you have to make and considerations for the dimensions of things, which might not be fun for some people, but for me, and I'm still making this obviously quite a loose drawing, and I'm not agonizing over the marks too much, but I'm also trying to think about the things that I have seen, because it does vary. It's not a uniform number of stacked cubes with, you know, flaps and handles and things. It's all different things, all higgledy-piggledy everywhere. And this at the moment, for example, is one of those, it's like a CD case. It's sort of stacked like a tower, and has a stick going through the centre of the CDs there. And then you can only see bits of the CDs kind of, you know, catching the kind of silvery plastic edge of the CD. So it's not a very good drawing of it, but at the same time, it's still a different shape again. I think I have old computers and things up there. But it's nice the fact that I have those boards down for the floor, which then go up to the chair. I've got some of these boxes here, and this is obviously leading off to the left into this gap, which is that going to make that window, the opportunity for a window through to a different area. And until you go out of the loft and not go out of the loft, come out of the hatch and into the loft, do you stop seeing through that little triangle that we can see on the left. So I'm about to utilize that space, which I think is a benefit of this memory for depth and interest, because it shows that some things are solid and some things are gaps, and it gives the viewer something which can describe a space. Even if it's a crude drawing like this, it just makes a more interesting image to look at for me. It's a bit of depth, it's a bit of a world creation that you're seeing, and so long as it's considered enough, you can forgive certain, you know, bits of rough marks and things. As you can see there, it's not exactly incredibly refined marks, but at the same time they're all going in a fairly different, fairly similar vanishing point, to a fairly similar vanishing point, just as those ones going back into the loft that I'm drawing now, back into the top right, they're also, should be receding at a similar angle. But not everything is straight, Some things are faces, some things are twisted a bit. So there is room to manoeuvre still. Beyond this, there is actually, because that's a wooden beam, there is a gap higher up. What I'm drawing now, however, is a cable that comes from a light that hangs on one of the beams, and it just comes down and across. So I thought if I score that in, that's something which I'm going to recognise and might not make as much sense to other people. And then at some point it does disappear underneath the insulation. So that's the bit of furry stuff that I'm scratching in there. There are several different positions I could have taken in my memory to draw this, but I do quite like this one, obviously because of that triangular window on the left, but also because it's a real entrance into a different space, and it can make use of the hatch. I mean, that could be seen from another angle as well. It's maybe worth considering, because it is a strange space in the house that you rarely think about, and when you do go up into a loft and see things that you've had in storage for a while, it's such a mixture of memories and confusion and kind of guilt that you haven't just got rid of a lot of this stuff or donated it or whatever you've got to do, and other things you still can't decide if it's sentimentally valuable or if it's just a bit of old tat, which as you can tell by the way I'm saying it, I'm pretty sure that it's probably the latter, but until I know for sure, I will be treating certain things as precious despite whether they deserve it or whether or not they deserve it. Now I'm drawing the other side of the rooftop where you can see the beams coming down, which is another thing that I didn't consider initially, and it's only when I got to this part of the drawing I even remembered it was there. So it's funny how this practice of drawing from memory can even jog clearer memories of the space that you're drawing. I was describing to someone the other day how if you were to draw a vase in front of you, and you look at the vase but you want to draw it from a vantage point that you can't see. So for example, if you wanted to look straight at the vase but then imagine what it'd look like to view it from beneath the surface that it's sat on. If it's not a glass surface, you can't look from underneath, so you have to just use your imagination and your observational skills of what the object is to then draw something. And it's not a case of it has to be perfect, it's just that you have to try, because there's benefit in that effort, and it will be like working a muscle that you've never worked before, much like this was for me, where I draw a lot where it's ink first. I draw a lot from imagination, but I very rarely have this sort of a challenge where I draw from memory and I'm trying to make it accurate. This is another detail which I sort of forgot. As much as that triangle's nice, it is a wooden beam, which means that it does go up. It's not a solid wall, and I will not only have the triangle to view things through, I also have stacks of things to my immediate left, so not in front of me and then going to the left, but immediately behind that wooden joist there on the left are other objects all stacked up. All the hoovers, and I think I've got several keyboards in a stack, and just bags of yogurt pots, because they used to use those for mixing painting, and then I haven't painted that way where I mix colour and have it in a pot for a long time. I say for a long time, I've not been doing art for that long, but at the same time I've been doing it long enough that it's 5 or so years ago that I did mixing of colour that way, and now I'm far more inclined to do alla prima painting. So some of this stuff is based on some of the random objects. That's why it all looks like weird bars and things, is that one of it I think is based on my pull-up bar, that I have up there that just doesn't fit on any of the door frames. And then that's stacked on top of other things that are you just can't tell what they are until you start lifting things off. It's just a heap of stuff, and it's not that, it's just been thrown there. It's just that some objects just don't sit comfortably unless they're completely disassembled and put back into the original packaging that they came in. And some of this stuff's from, the 90s, so I don't have it. But there we go. That's me out of time for this drawing. And again, just like with all of them, I really did learn a hell of a lot from doing it. So I highly recommend you try it yourself. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and it's worth trying, even if you've seen a lot of mistakes. I mean, you can see how I draw it, and it's always worth it to me. So yeah, okay.